When did you start up at DiGard?
Well, I worked with Waddell, and I got to meet some really nice guys over there with Waddell. You know, he had the money. He had Dan Ford over there. He had Slick Poston. He had Zoomer was there, and then God, I'm trying to think of his name. The machinist, Luter.
Yeah.
He had Luter, James Luter in there, and the machine shop. He had Larry Wallace doing motors and cams, doing stuff. Yeah, know them all great people. So I got to work with all this great talent. So it did teach me a lot. You're going from an independent to where you're trying to get by to where you can buy whatever you need. I mean, it wasn't unlimited, but it was unlimited as far as I was concerned, because if I needed a new fit for an oil line, you just got a new fit for oil line. You whatever it took to fix the car is what you bought and what you did right there. So that was a big change. Now, halfway through the season, like I said, I went to work for Waddell in 1980, the 80 season right there, making $15,000 a year. And halfway through the year, DiGard called me up and wanted me to come over there. And they said that Buddy Parrott's going to be the crew chief, but we want you to do the job. But he knows people. He's a good organizer and stuff like that. So he's going to carry the title as crew chief. But I said, I don't care what you call me as long as you let me do the job right there. And they offered me a $3,000 raise. They offered me $18,000 a year. Yeah. Well, $18,000 is still a whole lot of money. But when you're talking about $3,000 is a lot. I mean, that's a pretty big jump right there. And I realized that as long as I was working with Waddell, that Waddell was always going to be the crew chief, and I was never going to really advance any more than what I was. So I thought it was a good opportunity for me. And Darrell Walter was the driver over there, so I left and went over there with him.
Now, everybody knows the DiGard reputation.
Yeah,
things are up and down. Is that the way you saw it?
Sure. I mean, they had the two brothers there, and you would hear one story from one brother that stayed there all the time. And then Bill that was gone, he'd come into town, oh, yeah, we're going to get air conditioning in the shop, and it'll be here. And get right on that, Jim, and I want you to get that thing done. And then Jim, I got it priced. And the next thing you know, he'd come back, Jim, what happened to that air conditioning? Well, we just don't have it in the budget right now and everything. It always worked that way. They told a good story, but the money never came through.
Right.
And stuff. And there was a lot of different times. I enjoyed working there, because Darrell finally fought and got out of his contract, and he left at the end of the season right there. And Robert Yates was building the motors, and there, of course, with Noah Brown, and Dan Ford was over there then. He'd come over there. So I went in, and Robert called me in the office, and I was kind of, the chief mechanic, I guess you would call it, at the time, pretty much. And he called me in and said, look, Darrell just got out of his contract, and we got to have another driver for next year. Who do you think we ought to get to drive the car? And that's when I told him, I said, I'd call Ricky Rudd.
Yep.
And he did. And that's when Ricky actually he had been driving for Truxmore before that, that after his family quit racing.
Yeah.
The 79 season. So at 80 or 81, he came over there to DiGard.
Well, what was that like for you two to reunite with a team that had a little bit more oomph and economic power than you used to?
It was great because, Ricky, of course, he came up from go-karts and stuff like that, road racing, road course go-karts and stuff. And he was good right off the bat. I think we went out and qualified about third or something, was running, might have been leading the rank. We led the race some and was running right up front at our very first race at Riverside in January. And I think we ended up having motor trouble or something like that, didn't finish right there. But it was good. After, Jake was over there, and Ricky and Jake fought some, and Jake, I love Jake. He was a great guy, but he could be hard to get along with sometimes. He'd be your best friend, and then all of a sudden it's like the wind changed direction, and all of a sudden he didn't like you no more. And it happened to a lot of guys there, and finally they let him go, and they made me crew chief over there with Ricky. And that was good for me. It was a good break for me, and hopefully for Ricky, because him and Jake just didn't see eye to eye on a lot of things. We went to Rockingham, I believe it was, and the clutch, the geometry wasn't right on the clutch pedal, and it was real fast acting. And every time he'd let it up, it'd about stall the car out. Well, he stalled the car out like once or twice on pit road, and he'd complained about it all week, and Jake did anything about it. So it was kind of, a little bit of Jake's fault right there too for not fixing a problem. He's a young kid, don't know, so he didn't listen to him. And Jake was hard. He couldn't hardly understand on the radio. So Jake would come to me and he said, I want you talking to him on the radio. So I did all the radio communications with him, and he'd come over to me and says, you tell that little, if he stalls that thing out on pit road one more time, he said, I'm going to knock him upside the head right there and hang. So that is exactly what I told Ricky. I
Jake
phrased
has
it a little
asked
bit
that you not do that again.
Yeah. But it was something else, and a funny little story. I believe it was at Rockingham then, and I was changing front tires still, and Jake would hold the pit board. He'd go out there and hold the pit sign. And I'd go around there, and when you took the tire off, you'd lay your air gun on the ground, and you had to put your own tire on and stuff. I'd put the tire on and look down, and my gun was gone. And I looked, and it was around the front of the car. I'd reach around and drag it back over there, put the tire on. Well, it happened on the second pit stop. Did the same thing. Gun's back over there. So finally, I told one of the guys on the pit stop, I said, look, your job is to watch my gun and my air hose right here. I said, somebody is dragging my gun back around the front of the car right here. So I go around there. Sure enough, that time he said what happened was Jake is throwing his pit board over the wall, and it's laying on top of the air hose and dragging the gun back because it's, the hose is strung in a line, and it would go across and it would drag it back down. So it was dragging my gun across there. I said, Jake, you're killing me here. So the next time he comes in and throws it, and it goes over and knocks the regulator off the end of the air bottle. He was all mad, but it was fun. We actually got Ricky his first pole at Martinsville, and then we got another one at Nashville. And we were running real good. We ran real good at both tracks, the short track stuff right there. We set on the pole like that at Nashville, and we really wanted to win that race, and we were changing springs till we were like blue in the face. And Ricky Petty come walking over there, and like I said, we was a bunch of kids. And he comes over, he says, what are you doing? I tell him, trying to make this thing a little better for the race right here. He said, ain't gonna happen. He said, put the springs back in there you qualified with. He said, run it like that. You ain't gonna get it no better than that right there. And we did. We ended up, okay, we just quit fooling around, put the springs, set it up just like it was for qualifying right there, same springs and all. Just probably add a little more wedge, something like that. And we led most of the race. Mm-hmm. I'd probably say at least halfway, maybe 3/4 of the way through. And we would have like a straightaway lead on the field. They just couldn't keep up with us. We were really good that night. And all of a sudden we come in for a pit stop. We can't keep up. We're sitting there running third and fourth and can't barely keeping up with everybody doing all we can do. So Benny Parsons won the race in the MC Anderson car, mm-hmm. the 27 car. And I think Bobby might have been second or third, something like that. And we were third or fourth. I can't remember where we finished at right there. And I walked down to Victory Circle. And don't many people know this, but I walked down to Victory Circle and looked. And Benny's car had left side tires on the right. Mm. Well, then I walked down to Bobby's car, the second place car, and he had left side tires on the right. Well, now I knew why we couldn't keep up. Everybody had, and I went down to Dick Beatty. I said, all these guys finished ahead of us. They got left side tires on the right. He said, let me tell you something. He said, you worry about your car, and we'll worry about them. And that was the end of it.
Oh.
Now, where was that?
That was at Nashville.
Wow.
Nashville. We had set on the pole and had them out. We should have won that race. But we were the first legal car for whatever that's worth. It pays the same thing. You still don't get the trophy, but, it made you feel good that you could run that good.
Awesome.
Well, how long were you at DiGard? I seem to remember it was more than a year.
I was there from the middle of 81 until part of the way through 82. About a year right okay. there. Gary Nelson and I didn't see eye to eye on some things. I didn't like the way he did carry his business, stuff like that. And I couldn't take it anymore. And I just, right in the middle, I just left mm-hmm. at the end of the season right there. And I'll probably just leave it at that.
Okay. Where'd you go after that?
Hmm?
Where'd you go after that?
I went over to Booby Harrington had been calling me, trying to get me to come over to over there with J.D. Stacy, with Dale Inman, and stuff. So it was funny because he'd been trying to hire me away, and he offered me real good money to come over, a big raise to come over there, and I quit and went over and told him, I said, okay, I'm ready to go to work. And then he dropped me about $3,000 or $4,000. I said, yeah, but you offered me that. He said, yeah, but you had a job then. He said, now you don't have one. Whatever. You know? And that was a pretty neat experience. That was pretty eye opening too. Working over there, they had that huge shop down there by Sunset off of 77.
Yeah.
And a lot of cars had that big overhead cranes. There was cars. I mean, it was just full of cars in the shop down there, and got to work with some good drivers. You know, I worked with Tim Richmond over there, and a couple others. Robin McCall, she came over there, worked, got to know her a little bit. A lot of drivers just came and went, ran a couple races and stuff. But that was quite the experience doing that also.
Now, weren't you with Tim when he won his first race?
Yeah, we won the two Riverside races.
Yeah, okay.
Right there. Yep.
Like the question I asked with Grant, I'll ask the same basic question about Tim. We know what happened with Tim.
Yeah.
We know his reputation. We know that he was a very flamboyant guy.
Mm-hmm.
Who was the Tim Richmond that you knew?
The Tim that I knew was a great guy. Another great guy. I mean, when we weren't racing, we'd go over to his house, and maybe hit the lake or do something like that. There was always something going on. He'd do anything for you. If you needed $1, he had $1. If you needed a hand, he had a hand. And he would help you any way he could back then. And even though he was inexperienced at driving the stock cars and stuff, he had just so much raw talent. You couldn't help but admire the guy for it. I mean, one of his first races, and it might have been his first race he ran, was we were at Darlington. And I remember this like crazy because it was one of those deals where the leader was just about up to ready to lap him at the end of the race, and they threw the checkered flag, and he came around and came in the pit road. Because he saw everybody the checkered flag. He sees everybody slowing down, so he just slows down and pulls in. Well, he never took the checkered flag. So the official comes over to me and says, hey, he needs to take the checkered flag. So when he's coming, I ran and met him down pit road, and I got in and I'm jerking on him like this, and you got to make one more lap, And by that time, it was too late. And the official he said, it's too late. Never mind, right there. So, but like I said, that was just an experience. But Cale Yarborough sort of did the same thing at Daytona.
Right.
So experience or not, it can happen to anybody.
That's right. You did.
Another person that I wanted to ask about is, I know J.D. Stacy by reputation.
Right.
I know that he had a reputation as a maverick, that kind of thing. I know that at one point somebody supposedly found a bomb under his car and all that.
Yeah. Yep. Who
was J.D. Stacy?
Well, a lot of times you don't get to know the team owners that good. Some of them you do. Harry Ranier, great guy. He treated all of us just like we were his own kids or something. And that's like father, like son. His son right now, Lauren Ranier. Yeah. When my boat burned down back in 2008, him and his wife were the first ones over there with a great, huge duffel bag full of clothes. Because, like I said, I lost everything. I walked off the boat with a bathing suit and tennis shoes. And that was it. And they came over and gave in a nice card and everything. And he calls, and we still talk to each other and stuff. So, J.D. Stacy, I would ride to the airport with him and stuff like that. He'd tell jokes. He did the old joke about what's the last thing that passes through a gnat's mind when he hits your windshield. Yeah. And he told me that in the back of one that we had. They had one of those Buick show cars. It looked like they had the decal up for the street and everything. We were riding to the airport coming out of Pocono. Might have been, no, it was Michigan, coming out of Michigan. And he told me that joke in the back seat of the car. First time I heard that. And he just laughed and carried on.
Yeah.
But I heard all the stories.
Yeah.
You hear about how he didn't pay this person, didn't pay that bill or something, some of the cars he sponsored. I never knew any of that. He paid us all the time. I never had any trouble with it or anything like that. And I never saw the bad side that some people talk about. Never saw that. he was always good to me and everybody that I knew.
Benny Parsons, 86, I think. You guys won the racing line. How'd that come about? I mean, what team was it, just to refresh my memory, and how'd it happen?
Well, I worked with over Stacy's through 82. And right there toward the end, J.D. Stacy and Booby came to me and told me, which Robert Harrington is Booby Harrington, right there, told me that Dale Inman had told him that he was going to be leaving at the end of the season, right there. And we had heard rumors that his money was tightening up and stuff like that, and they wanted me to be the crew chief when he left. So they actually, on paper, I guess, they made Dale and myself supposed to be co-crew chiefs for that last race right there, which I didn't see it. I was still doing the same old job, it was just on paper right there. But so I left at the end of the season because you could see money was tightening up and everything right there at the end like that. So I left at the end of 92. We were at Atlanta right there, and at the end of the season, and Johnny Hayes came over to me in the garage area, and he said, "Hey, I just hired your girlfriend over here." And I'm like, "What?" I didn't have a girlfriend. Like, "Yeah, Terry Lewis over here." And I go, "No, that's Gary Brooks' girlfriend, not mine. I don't know." He says, "Well, we just give her a job." I said, "You ain't got any more jobs over there, do you?" He said, "Well, let me check." And he called me the next week and hired me to be the crew chief over there for Benny Parsons to start that team. And it was funny because it was over here in Denver, which wasn't far from where I lived at the time. And they had a steel building that they were building. It was gravel out there. They didn't even have the panels on the roof. It was just a shell of a building right there. And they had a car that Leo Jackson had up in Asheville, and they brought it down to start because they had run a couple of races with Benny out of Asheville up there. And they brought it down, and we're trying to get ready to go test. And Johnny gave me a check, and I went to Sears down there and bought drill presses and some electric. I had to buy everything electric because we didn't have anything. We didn't have a compressor. We didn't have anything in the shop. It was just a concrete floor. And I loaded up that thing. I probably bought $3,000 or $4,000 worth of stuff down there, drills and vices and everything you could find to work with. And all I had was a check that said Johnny Hayes Racing on it right there. And the guy at Sears, he comes over and he goes, "Hold on a minute, let me get the manager." And he comes out and he says, "Look, that's a lot of stuff there, $3,000, $4,000 check right here and everything." He says, what is this Johnny Hayes Racing?" I said, "Well, we're running Winston Cup over here, Grand National stuff." He said, "Who's your driver?" I said, "Benny Parsons." He said, "Oh, okay. It's good. Load him up."
That's cool.
Because everybody knew who Benny Parsons was. Okay, that was fine. But we just had a hole in the wall. They had a saw box outside the building, and we plugged in 2 or 3 extension cords. We're in there with electric drills, putting panels in the car and getting ready to go to test at Daytona. And the guys are still up there with forklifts, putting panels on the top of the building and everything. And the guy showed up with a compressor, and they set it out there on the rocks. And we just screwed a couple nipples in the end of the tank and ran some hoses in the shop. That's the way we started right there. And he had one of those almost like a little U-Haul truck that had the van front end and a little box back end and an open trailer is what we had. And that's what we had when we won the race.
Now, that was the Winston Open?
Okay,
all right.
It was the Open we won, and then we came back the next week and won the actual Atlanta race.
Okay. Benny was towards the end of his career.
Mm-hmm.
And he was starting to get into TV a little bit. Was the consensus that he maybe had his focus split a little bit, or were you content with the Benny who was at the racetrack, in the garage, in the car, or did you sense that there was any kind of...
I don't know if he had I don't know if he had like a conflict of interest or something like that. I didn't see that he was still focused on racing. But the problem is, and I find myself, as a tire changer and stuff, you think you did it yesterday, you think you can do it today.
Yeah.
And you find the drivers not putting theirself in that position anymore. Like, we had a really strong car at Daytona, and to be fast, you got to be a little bit loose at Daytona. Talladega. You have to be that way a little bit. And we would be running third, and they'd make a lap and come by, and there was like 2 cars catching us, catching the pack right there in that top 3. And they'd come by the next time, and we're behind those 2 guys. And then whoever came up, he didn't want to be the last guy in line because the guy behind you makes you a little bit loose right there. So you could see a little bit of that maybe, now whether the driver even realizes it's happening, you're just getting where you don't take chances like you used to. And I know I do the same thing. Andy Petrie was over the house one time, and we used to do some fierce tubing on Lake Norman. And I was like the king. They couldn't throw me off of that thing. And Andy and Bobby Hill and a bunch of people were over there doing a party, and we would run 4 or 5 tubes at a time back there, and they would turn me over, and I'd tuck my head like that so the water didn't catch my life jacket, and I'd be upside down, and I would push on the thing and flip back up. And they're like, we can't get this guy off. So they finally crawled from theirs over to mine and peeled my hands off the handle and threw me off. Well, Andy had me out there one time, and he got so bad, I think he crossed a big wake, and I went and I busted my eardrum.
Ooh.
And I missed the next race, was Michigan. I missed the next race, and because I was laid up at the Eyer Nose Throat Hospital down here. And I never tubed as hard after that. I didn't, and I thought maybe I was, but I noticed what would happen is if they were really getting super fast, like it was that day, I would just kind of let go and just slide across top of the water. I didn't put myself in that position again.
Yeah.
And I wasn't scared, but and probably it was being scared. But you got wiser and you realize what can happen to you. And I think that's what happens. You see a lot of the drivers, Darrell Waltrip. He never was the same driver after he had that big wreck in the Pepsi cart at Daytona. Jeff Gordon, he had a bad wreck, and he, almost all of them never are the same driver after that one big wreck. You can look back on almost everybody's career. The only person I ever saw that never did that was Dale Earnhardt. And he'd wreck him and flip him, and he just kept on going. You couldn't stop him. He's the only driver I've ever seen in my period of racing that never slowed up after a major wreck like that.
What was the tenure like with Alan Kulwicki? It was not too long, was it?
It was short.
Yeah.
I was going to say it was short. It was my fault. I had left Cale Yarborough's.
Yeah.
And I went over to Alan. I called Humpy Wheeler. I said, man, it was kind of, in the start of the season, everybody's got jobs. All the positions are filled. I said, man, I need a job, Humpy. I said, could you suggest something? And he said, you need to go talk to Alan Kulwicki. And he probably called Alan. But so I went over there and went to work for Alan. And, of course, Alan was so much of a hands-on engineer guy himself. He was a very smart guy. And the thing with Alan was he was so much hands-on that you felt a little, I wouldn't say it's intimidated, but you just if you didn't want somebody telling you what to do all the time, because before you were always in control as a crew chief, and now, you could see him. And even after I left, we were at Richmond, and he wrecked the car, and we're in the pits beside him. For some reason, our radios were bleeding over, and he's sitting in the car, and I'm listening to him tell the guys how to fix the car. All right, now set the toad, pull that string down the side. He's play by play. He's telling them everything about how to fix the car, and you almost feel like, well, evidently we don't know how to do this. It makes you feel kind of bad in a way that you don't even know how. He does, but he did that at the shop, and a few things like that. We only ran 2 or 3 races together, 3 or 4 races together. It wasn't long. Right. We went to Richmond and actually got Alan's first pole for him right there, and so I was proud of those kinds of things. I enjoyed getting the poles and winning races, what you want to do, but. It came down to, we got in an argument one day about some stuff on the car, and I said, well, we need this. He said, well, that don't make no difference, like that. And he said, this is the way we've always done it. I said, well, that figures, and, it was on some exhaust getting ready to go in the car, and I wanted to make some straighter pipes, less restriction. And all we had was some big 90-degree elbows to go under there and everything like that. And I go, man, you don't want to do that, And he said, well, that's the way we've always done it. Well, that figures, and then I got out and I go, Alan, I said, look, I said, I'll probably ought to just go find another job. I said, I can see where this is headed, and I went outside. He came out there and tried to talk me into coming back. I said, look, if it doesn't happen today, it's going to happen next week or next month. It's going to happen. I mean, this is not going to work. So I went ahead and left. And, you look down the road and, some of those things, there's a lot of, like most of us, you regret a lot of decisions you make and everything. I mean, I should have toughed it out with Ricky at DiGard.
Yeah.
I should have toughed it out with Alan. And, humble myself and just stick that pride in the back pocket and kept on working. I should have done that, but I didn't. I can't say I made a lot of bad decisions like everybody else, but enjoyed it.
Well, even after Alan, you had steady work. You worked right.
Oh yeah,
run through. What was your last year? Really full time.
Well, with Ricky, I went over. Ricky hired me back over with. He had his own team.
Right.
With the Tide
That's
team.
Up here.
That was up here, right down the street, down here, a couple blocks away, and he hired me over there doing. He had a special project for Ford, and we had like a center block room built in the shop. Like a small garage. It was about the size of a 2-car garage, maybe a 3-car garage in the shop. And it was a special project for Ford Motor Company. They had a company build a chassis that they had designed. It had bolt-on pieces all on the snout and things, all your pivot points, everything bolted on this car. It was a test car. And we brought it back to the shop and finished it up there. And we would take it and go test the car and stuff like that. So I ran the test program I was kind of the crew chief on it. It was Troy Aker, the engineer. I guess he was probably pretty much in charge of the thing, but I was the crew chief on the car right there.
At what point did you make the decision to leave the sport, or at what point was that decision made for you?
Well, I had been around, and I probably had the reputation for, if I didn't like things, I'll let you know. I mean, if I wasn't happy or I'd have thought something was wrong, because I wanted to win races. If I thought something was wrong, I'd let you know. It probably didn't work best in my favor and stuff, but and I always wanted things perfect. It's perfect, and you can't do that in racing. You got to get things done. So I went to work for Ricky over there after running some truck stuff and doing some different things. He hired me over there, and at the end of the season, Ricky came to me and told me that he was thinking about selling the team. Right there, that Robert had offered him a job, and he said, "I'm thinking about selling it." He said, "What do you think?" And I told him probably ought to do it. And everything. He said, "Well, I'm thinking about it right now." And they went to the race that week, and that's when I said, this the end of the season. They only had like one more race to go or something like that. I said, I've been doing this for 26 years now. I said, I'm done. I thought about maybe doing something else, and that's when I thought about getting a big boat and doing the charter boat business, stuff like that. So he came home to the racetrack. He said, "I did it." I went in and told Robert that I'm gonna drive for him next year and everything. So I went right away. The very next week I went down to Atlanta and bought a boat. I was in the boat business. Come to the end, I finished the season with him.
Yeah.
But because they couldn't deliver it until like February or March or something like that. But went right away into that.
Yeah, that charter business, that was pretty good for you. I mean, I've been on your boat on the charter.
We did the one with Casey Mears.
Right. Yeah.
From Charlotte Motor Speedway.
It's got. It had to be a good business for you. Things were looking great.
It was a good business. I really enjoyed it because I'm a people person. I like people. I like to see people enjoy themselves. I mean, one of the biggest things for me, I guess, I try and make people laugh. I want to see everybody happy.
Right.
I like to see happy people, and the boat provided that for me because we weren't. I mean, it's a charter boat, but it wasn't. Most people think of a charter boat as a charter fishing boat, and ours was like a private charter. We did like corporate entertaining, weddings, birthdays, anniversaries. It held 150 people, so people were coming to have a good time.
Right.
I mean, it's like you almost had to try on purpose to piss them off because they were coming to have a good time. I mean, you're going to go-kart track to race go-karts and have fun. I mean, you're going to have fun. I mean, it's hard not to. And people are coming to do that. They're there to kick back and have a good time. So we had some great memories on there. We did a retirement party for Dave Marcus.
Yeah.
We ran the boat out of a restaurant over here called Midtown Sundries.
Yeah.
On Lake Norman.
Mm-hmm.
I kept it parked behind their dock. They did the catering for us. So I was in there one day, and I looked up, and they had that NASCAR, the Classics, on there, and it was the Richmond race. And I recognized that they were showing the 2-car go around the track, and we had Joe Ruttman driving for us over at J.D. Stacy's, and we were leading the race. And we had probably a straightaway lead on everybody then. And all of a sudden, a piece of the tailpipe broke out. A little chunk of tailpipe broke out on the left side, cut the lift rear tire down, and we spun.
Huh.
Well, that's when everybody's under caution. Of course, Dave Marcus, trying to get extra points, he stays out.
Right.
Bottom dropped out, started raining. Dave wins the race. And I recognized it the last couple. I said, this has got to be the race right there. So I watched Dave win the race.
Yeah.
And he was retired. He had just retired. So I called Dave. I said, look, I'd like to throw a retirement party for you. Because I know, when you retire from racing, Goodyear gave a watch and probably a couple of cases of hats, so he still got them. But I'm sure he gets tired for life. But anyway, you get a pat on the back and they say, see you later.
Yeah.
When you're done, you're done. So I invited him. And I asked him, I said, who do you want to invite? He said, whoever you want to. I said, well, I don't want to invite somebody you don't like. Because drivers, there's some certain people certain other drivers they had a run-in with and they just never liked them. Ricky and Earnhardt had that kind of thing right there. They had a deal over the years, which I learned when Ricky did the show with Dale Jr., that Ricky and Dale had gone to dinner just a month or two, couple months before, maybe 6 months before Dale's death, and had patched everything back up and got to be friends right there, put it all behind them. But anyway, we invited James Hilton came, Trickle came, Doyle Ford, the flagman, back then came. I mean, I can't name all the drivers that came. We just had everybody come out there and went out. And Tom Cotter, which used to own one of the marketing companies and stuff right there. Great guy, but I got him to kind of do like the MC for me. And it was funny because Bobby Allison came, Bobby and Donnie came and stuff like that. And Bobby and Donnie gave Dave a retirement gift. They had a shock absorber. They had a box for shock absorber, one of them long boxes right there, and they each had one. And in it, when they gave it to him, it was a wingtip with the number 71 painted on the toe. And they all told stories. And I think Bobby told a story of something about Doyle was up there. He said something about something he did with a flag at the end of the race or something like that. And Doyle said, well, I liked him. Bobby said, why'd you black flag me? And you didn't black flag him. Well, I liked him, So it was really a fun time. So we got to do a lot of memorable stuff on there. We did a lot of weddings, a lot of birthdays. A lot of race teams would do parties. Johnny Benson, he would throw a party for his team on there. A lot of different guys like that. Robbie Gordon did one. Trying to think who else there was. Another good one that we did. But it was just so many of them that it was great to have fun and see the people that you kind of grew up with. Because I mean, from your 20s up until then, you up to 50, that was growing up and stuff. But to see them have fun and do that kind of stuff, it was a great experience for me.
What caused the fire, and when was that?
Well, it was on June the 10th of 2008.
Okay.
And we had one of the guys that plays on the boat. We would have guitar players on there or a DJ or something like that. And one of the guys played guitar for me. It was his daughter's birthday or graduation party. And she had about 75 kids we took out and went swimming. The boat had a slide off the back of it from the top deck. Yeah. And we'd anchored and swam and came in and were fueling the boat up. And it never was really determined what caused the fire. Somewhere there was some static buildup or something, and there was an explosion right there. Unfortunately, it killed a boy that was fueling the boat. He usually worked at the marina, and it was his 1-year anniversary with his girlfriend, and the marina stayed open until 8 o'clock at night in the summertime, and we were getting done with our swimming party at 4:30. So he took the day off and worked for me that day, which I knew him from, working the docks all the time. And he was fueling the boat when it exploded right there.
I did not know
and
that.
I had 2 crew people on the top deck, 2 girls, and they dove off the top of the boat. And the guy that was doing the party for his daughter, he was inside, and I had just walked upstairs to get my briefcase to come in and write him a receipt right there. And when I opened the door, it blew me in the briefcase. It blew me back out the front. And luckily, he was off to the side because the blast came up the hallway. And So I went in and told him to get out and stuff. And we ran and we found everybody, but we couldn't find the boy. And by then, the whole thing was engulfed in flames, and it was just too late then.
I know you lost a lot.
Yeah.
But how did you recover? What did it take to recover?
It was tough. I mean, let me throw a little thing in about how people tell you whenever you do a contract, always have a lawyer look over that contract. And this is for everybody out there. I had an insurance policy. And, you read your insurance policy and it tells you everything, in case of an accident, they'll have a lawyer represent you and stuff like that. Well, the very next morning, I'm down there at the dock and this guy walks up and he says, I'm here representing your insurance company. And just to let you know, it says in your policy that we may hire an attorney to represent you. And I'm here to let you know we're not. And turned and left. That was it. And they're sitting there. They can't find the boy. We looked all afternoon, by then, it's not going to be good. So the next day, they have divers in the water. They got everybody, and they finally come to me and said, "Look, he's either in the boat or under the boat. We can't find him. We need to get a crane in here to raise the boat and all." And they said it's going to be about $50,000-$60,000 to do this, and I got nothing. I'm sitting here, $6,000-$7,000 in the bank from the season right there. And I said, well, just get him out. Whatever we got to do, get it up. So I signed off to get the crane and stuff. And it was a mess. I was fortunate that there was a group, Rosamond Catton and Musin down in Charlotte, a group of lawyers I used to take out on the boat. And they called up and said, look, we understand you're in a jam, and we know you don't have the money to handle all this, so we're going to help you out. And they came in and they had some interns that needed, so they went against my insurance company to get them to represent me. But that's what it said. Most most contracts say, in case of accident, they will hire an attorney to represent you. And in the fine print, I was reading it quick. It said we may hire an attorney. It didn't say we will. It says we may hire an attorney. And you see the part about our attorney to represent you. Good, I'm covered. And it didn't work out that way. So luckily, I came out about dead even. I got everything, they fought, and we finally kind of broke even in the whole thing. And I was lucky to find an investor that got me in the business the second time.
I did not know all that.
But I'm still, I ended up, I met a girl working on the boat. She'd only been, we've been known each other about a month when the explosion happened. And we ended up getting married a couple years later, 2010. And it's been about 4 years ago now, we just got on our feet, got dug out of this hole from all these things, and got us a house now, and we're good. We're all good now.
Good.
But the retirement thing, that's all gone. So
Yeah.
I can see me working now until the last day.
And you're working something really unusual.
It is. Working for an old friend of mine, Nick Minutier, that was one of the top welders and stuff, TIG welders at several race teams, Yates and places like that. Hendrick, I met him first at Hendrick, but he's got a business. We recondition or restore the old 66 to 77 Ford Broncos.
Well, after all this time, Chip, and all the different jobs you've had and all the different drivers you worked with, I think it's remarkable that so many of today's fans may not know you personally, but they know Cliff Champion. They've heard that name. How does that make you feel?
It feels good. My wife now, they came along after all the racing. They don't know anything about it.
Right.
Her prior husband, he was a big Earnhardt fan and stuff, or Dale Jr. fan and stuff. So he would go to the racetrack, and she saw the pictures in the house, but didn't know anything about it. The daughter and stuff, when we got together, she was like 5 years old. And I'm going to say about maybe 5 years ago, I was over at, she and I had gone over to Harris Teeter, to the grocery store to get something, and we're coming out of the door, and I go, hey, Jimmy, it's Jimmy Johnson going in the store. Oh, it was Chad. It was Chad Canals.
Yeah.
I said, hey, Chad. And he kind of, oh, hey, Cliff, how you doing? Because I'd worked with Chad when I worked with Ray Abraham for a little while. And so we sat there and talked a while. And then she was probably maybe 10 at the time then, maybe 9 or something like that. And he went on, hey, I'll see you later. And he went in the store, and she turned around and says, who was that? I said, that was Chad Canals. That was crew chief for Robbie Gordon over there. I mean, for Jimmy and stuff at the time. And she, they don't know. But it's funny. There's a restaurant here in town that I eat at all the time, Red Rocks, down in Brookdale. I know where down there. Yeah. And I know you probably know Ron Herbert, the owner. Sure. Down there, him and John Love. But anyway, I would go in there and sit at the bar because I hated to take up a table for one person. Because I was single. I would go in there and sit. And I got to know Jeff Gordon when I worked on his car for a short time, and with Ray. And I'm sitting at the bar eating my food, and all of a sudden, I feel this boom, and somebody just gut punches me right in the side, and the ribs right there. And I look up, and they keep on going, and he gets to the door over there, and he turns around, and it's Jeff Gordon. He goes, hey, Cliff, and he walks out the door. And the place is like packed along there. So okay. And I bend down, and start eating my food again, and then I kind of, you kind of notice that everybody's looking at you, and everybody's like, who the hell are you? It's like, we know that was Jeff Gordon, but who the hell are you? It's like,
that's cool.
But it's neat. There's a lot of friends out there. I made a lot of friends over the years and stuff. And
well, you got 2 of them right here.
Exactly. I mean, the old stories, the old stuff, we know the old stories, the fun it was back then, which a lot of the fun's gone now and stuff. It's too much money into it, too corporated. You can't do the things that we did back then. But I miss my friends. And so I try and stay in touch with as many of them as I can. But, life goes on, and we all get busy and stuff. Right. But I don't regret a minute of it. I regret some of the decisions I made, some of the stupid decisions I made, leaving teams or staying too long at one or something like that. But I think we all have that in life. Right. But as a whole, I loved it, enjoyed it, and glad I did it.